Welcome back, Happy Fabricators. So today we're going to be doing a compatibility review between the Primeweld Cut 60 and the Langmuir Systems Crossfire Pro. So should you decide to purchase this combination of machines, we're going to go over the mechanics of how to get them hooked together and get you up and running. And in the process of doing so, I'm going to be giving my thoughts on their compatibility and functionality as a unit. So let's pretend these guys aren't unpacked yet and go back to the beginning. Okay, so now that we got the table mostly set up, we're going to move on to the main purpose of this video, and that is to show how specifically to hook up the Primeweld Cut 60 to this table. So we're going to dive into the Cut 60 box, find the components that we need, and show you how to get them all put together. Okay, so once we open the box up here, the components that we need are going to be inside of these boxes. If you want to see what all is in this package, make sure to reference my Primeweld Cut 60 video. We'll pop that up here, but for now we're just going to want to get into these boxes. Okay, so more specifically, the two things we're going to need is box number 1 and our instruction manual. So we're going to want to open up box number 1, and the thing we're looking for is this little guy. This is going to be our CPC connector that we're going to use to hook the plasma table up to the cutter itself. Okay, so after we got these two components here, the other two things we're going to want is we're going to want to go to our torch height controller box and get that guy from our Langmuir stuff, and then we also want our torch firing hardware. So we're going to go through this box, and you are going to want this little guy to start off with, the little barrel connector with 2 wires on it. So we're going to need that guy, and then we're going to go into our torch firing hardware, and we're going to pull out the lead that is in here. Okay, so now we have all the components we have. We have our CPC port, we have our DVI in port, we have the torch signal wire from Langmuir Systems, and we have our Cut 60 owner's manual. The tools that we're going to need are some sort of wire cutter, some sort of wire stripper, something to hold your connector while you're working on it. Third hand would probably work better, but this is what I got. You're going to need some solder, some shrink wrap, and a soldering iron. So the first thing we want to do is get this guy out of the package here and take it apart so we can get to the pins here. I'm going to slide this out so that we can get to it. And then I'm going to gently stick it in my little tiny vise here. You don't want to crank down on it, but I'm just going to do that just enough to hold it there so it's not wiggling around on me. Then we want to go to our owner's manual and go to page 29. So on page 29, we have our CNC connector port reference. So like I said, the two things we're working with are our DVI port and our torch signal switch. So in this diagram here, those are going to show us where these are at. We have all the pins here. So number 1 and 2 is our start stop. So that's our torch signal switch. And then number 4 and number 6 is our voltage dividing arc. So that's your DVI port. So we want to stick our torch signal wire on the pin 1 and 2, which translates over here to 1 and 2. And then we want our DVI to the divided voltage arc, and that's going to be on 4 and 6 on our pin. Okay, so what I'm going to start off by doing is we're going to take our torch signal switch and unwrap this guy, and take our wire cutters and clip the existing connectors off them. And then get a little bit of these guys stripped. There we go, get these as clean as possible. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take both these wires together, and I'm going to find a chunk of shrink wrap that will slide over both of them. So this is just a kit that I picked up in my local hardware store. I'll drop a link in the description to a kit similar to it. So before I start, I'm going to slide this guy over everything so that we can make a nice clean connection when we get them in our connector. We're going to find another set of shrink wrap that will go over our torch signal wires. Okay, now that we have all 5 pieces of shrink wrap slid onto here, we can start soldering this guy up. So I think I'm going to start with number 4 because it's right here in the center, and it's going to be the hardest to get to, I do believe. Okay, so there's 4 and 6, which is our DVI port. And then we have our signal wires, which are going to go on number 1 and number 2. Okay, so now that we're looking good there, you can see we have our number 1 and number 2 on our signal wires, and then our DVI wires are on 4 and 6 in there. Okay, so don't be dumb like me and make sure that your connector is slid on. Also, like when you do your shrink wrap and stuff, I had to unsolder this whole thing, but in the end, this is what it should look like. You should have your DVI pigtail and your torch firing pigtail both coming out. Torch firing pigtail should be on pin 1 and 2, and your voltage dividing pigtail should be on port 4 and 6. Okay, so once you get your machine mostly assembled and moved to the location that it's primarily going to live, and you also have your DVI cable and your torch firing cable all wired into your Primeweld pigtail here, we are going to unpack the Primeweld itself and get it all set up and show you how to get it all plugged in. One note, Primeweld, I believe, is working on a pre-made pigtail for this, so make sure to check their website out. Once again, Primeweld, as always, just has superb packing. No spaces in this thing. This thing is in a complete clamshell. I could tell I was looking at car parts earlier today. Clamshell. Get this guy out where we can get to it. Okay, so now that we got this all set up here, we're assuming that you've already installed the torch height controller chip into the control box. And if you haven't, Langmuir Systems has very good instructions on how to install that properly. You pop the cover off this and line up a couple pins and gently push it in. So I want to take a quick moment to thank the sponsor of this video, which is Primeweld. Now, Primeweld provides an assortment of TIG welders, MIG welders, and plasma cutters that are budget friendly and still do quality work. So make sure to check out the link in the description below and see if there's anyone there that'll meet your needs. Let's get back to the review. Next, we want to locate our torch height controller, and then the other thing you're going to need in the torch height controller box is your DVI cables. Okay, so first off, we're going to take our lead that we put together, and we're going to plug it right back into the back of our Primeweld here. Gently push that in as straight as possible, and then we're going to secure the locking collar on it. Then we have 2 barrel connectors left over. The short one is for the DVI setup, and the long one is for the torch firing system. So the short one, we're going to take our torch height controller box, and we're going to go to the DVI input, and we get to plug that guy into there. And then the long one, we're going to take and plug it into the control box right here into the port that says torch on off. The last lead that should be in our torch height controller, it's got this little 2-pin connector on it here and a barrel connector on the other end, and we're going to plug that in to the output on our DVI port for the torch height controller. And then this guy also gets plugged into our control box right into the outlet that is marked THC for torch height controller. So that's pretty much the extent of getting the electronics hooked on that guy. It's very simple, super user-friendly, and it will be even more user-friendly if Primeweld is able to provide a pre-made pigtail for that. It'll literally be plug and play. There'll be no soldering necessary. So hopefully that's something that they follow through with. Okay, so now that we've done some cutting, I just kind of want to go over my overall thoughts of these two machines and their compatibility with each other and just the functionality of it and all that. So we'll start with one at a time and go through just the pros and cons. So first off, we'll start off with the Primeweld Cut 60 and the pros. The number one pro to this machine is it comes CNC ready. It has a 12-pin CNC port on the back side. You can solder that guy in and it's ready to go. And hopefully, if the rumors are true, Primeweld's going to be selling a pre-made pigtail, so you don't even have to do any soldering. It'll be plug and play between these two machines and you'll be ready to go. The other pro is this thing has an extremely good owner's manual and customer service. And within that owner's manual, they have on page 29, they give you the pinouts and all your feeds and speeds for cut rates. That's one thing. I've had the old table for about 2 years and just upgrading to the Pro here, and Langmuir Systems and RazorWeld did not give a very good feeds and speeds chart. They had some in forums over the years and stuff, but it was just never very concrete. So this gives a great feeds and speeds chart. Another pro to this machine is its price. You're just not going to find another 60 amp machine that really does this work and fits within this price range. And the final pro to this machine is the packing. This thing had superb packing. Like, I feel like if it got kicked off the truck, it wouldn't know the difference. This thing comes in a complete clamshell with steel protectors in the corners of the boxes and super tight pack, no room for things to wiggle. So the cons with this machine. The only con that I really have with this machine is the torch that it comes with. It comes with an IPT60, which is not the worst torch in the world, but it's not the best torch either. But that is also one of the ways that Primeweld can provide it with such an affordable price, is giving you a middle-of-the-line torch. It has a Euro connection so that it's easy to upgrade to other machine torches that are compatible with this. And there is rumor that Primeweld is coming out with a machine torch that we could plug into this thing and run on our CNCs. So before we move on to the pro table, I just kind of want to show you some things that I've been cutting with this thing. We cut some sheet metal out and this thing just rips through it. That torch height controller is awesome. And I didn't have to worry about tip ups on this guy, and I could walk away and it just cut it out, which was super sweet. We also put the torch height controller to the test and cut some corrugated metal, and the thing ripped right through it. Didn't have any collisions at all. And then just for testing's sake, I also went through and cut some 3/8 material, and it cut really well. It actually surprised me how well it cut for it not being a machine torch and not being more of the hypertherm style consumables. So all these things were cut with the factory torch from all the stuff that you get right out of the box. So 3/8 material, still cut it like butter, and still has some pretty good results for the price you pay. And then we have our thoughts on our Langmuir Systems Pro. Now, some of these thoughts are going to be in comparison to the OG machine, because if you've been watching my previous videos, you know that I have the OG machine for 2 years, and some of these are just kind of in comparison to that and changes they've made that I appreciate. So the pros with this is obviously it's bigger, so if you have the space, that's definitely a pro. You have more cut width, so you have 48 inches by 33 inches now instead of 24 by 24, which is a huge improvement. The other improvements is the torch height controller and the Z-axis. Makes it so much easier to set your height because the computer does it all. Another positive of this machine is their updated FireShare software. Now, it is spectacular. Mach 3 is a very capable software, but it is so big in comparison to what this machine does, and the FireShare, they just basically simplify it down, put it in big, dumb buttons for people like me. The other pro to this machine in comparison to the last one is the gussetry on all the legs. Now, if you watch my 1 year review video, you've seen that I made that shelf below to stiffen the machine up, and I don't think you need it on this machine. They have really good gussets that hold everything nice and rigid, so you don't have to worry about the machine racking as it's cutting, and so that is a huge improvement for cut quality and just the overall durability of the machine, I believe. Another pro they have is they have a written manual on the website now for Langmuir Systems, opposed to having to watch the videos, and I really appreciate that. It's much easier to follow. You can stop where you're at, you can read it. So the cons to this machine. Number one con is the lead time. This thing took 4 months to get here from the order date, And in my mind, that's just kind of ridiculous. I'm honestly curious how the warranty works with this, if that warranty starts from the purchase date, because if it's a year-long warranty and it takes 4 months to get here, half your warranty's up by the time you even get your machine here. The other con to this is the packing was not that great, especially with some of the more vital hardware and components like the bearing carriages and stuff like that. Honestly, I'm surprised none of those are damaged. The box that came in was super loosely packed. There was a lot of weight in the box for things being so loose in there. There were parts of the box that were broken open, and there were boxes within the boxes that were smashed and broken open. The only damage that we sustained was the control box. The corner of it was crushed a little bit. The other con to this machine is the water table comes in 2 pieces. I'm kind of kicking myself in the butt for not doing what everybody says to do, and that is welding it together instead of using the silicone that they glue together with. But overall, I think I would still recommend the package of these 2 machines. They're very compatible, they're very easy to get plugged in together, and you can do some super cool stuff with it. So like always, if you want to see more fabrication content, click some of the links that are going to pop up here. If you want to get notified of upcoming videos, hit the subscribe button and go build something, guys.